Kim Sun smirked arrogantly and said, I organized today's party especially for Assistant Na. Sang-gu furiously clenched his face and said through gritted teeth, You did it on purpose. Other employees were buzzing. Assistant Na had spilled Assistant Kim's secret. Kim trusted him enough to confide, This is just too much. An employee sneered contemptuously at the assistant named Na, yet he dared to come here and eat meat. Another employee quickly chimed in front of expensive beef. Self-respect means nothing. Sang-guk heard those words and his face turned purple with anger, ashamed and not knowing where to hide. That person was so embarrassed he got angry and was about to lose control. He sat down helplessly in anger, only able to mutter curses under his breath, unable to do anything else. Head of Department Dong-gi and Assistant Kim gave each other a thumbs up in appreciation for completing the task. Suddenly Dong-gi noticed someone's figure. He startled, eyes wide as he looked at the person walking in. He suddenly stood up and shouted loudly, Please come in! His loud voice startled Kim Sun, who was walking by, and all the staff who were eating instinctively looked towards the door. A man with a sly smile on his face walked in confidently with his hands behind his back. He was their director. The other employees saw the man walk in, and each one quickly stood up to greet him. Director Chung spoke up, saying not to worry about him and told everyone to go ahead and enjoy their meal. He came here to meet Assistant Kim briefly, and he politely bowed to the chairman. Kim Sun felt a bit uneasy when the chairman came looking for him. Meat was constantly being brought out. The sizzling sound from the grill was quite pleasing. Ever since Director Chung arrived, everyone had been feeling tense, losing interest in the beef except for Kim Sun, who still had the mood to grill. The director poured the drink and said, I've heard about it. I heard you invested in coin very successfully? You hold the glass of wine with both hands for the director to pour, saying it was just luck. The director replies, Luck is also a kind of ability. I didn't expect Assistant Kim to be so good. If I had known the company had such a talent, I would have already set up a department specializing in coin within the company, the general director said with a laugh. You also smiled at the general manager's joke, not knowing how the general manager would look at you. You're famous for investing in coins, but there's no reason Director Chung would care about someone like you. You can't just come here to eat barbecue as you're thinking, Director Chung calls out to you. The director spoke up, with such a good long-term investment vision, how come you're so bad at judging people? Kim Sun didn't understand the meaning of the statement just made. He mentioned the divorce between Kim Sun and Chae Kwan, saying that doing so was a serious crime. You were the one who suggested the divorce first, right? Finding someone as perfect as Chae Kwan is rare. A man should understand a woman. Director Chung kept talking. But you stayed silent, not saying a word, yet deep down you were really angry. So it's definitely not Chae Kwan's fault, he concluded, pointing out that everything was Kim Sun's fault. The meat is starting to burn as the conversation drags on a little too long. The director leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, taunting him. What can I say? Thanks to Assistant Kim, I'm really happy. Even though he was angry, he still asked, Have I helped in any way? The guy gave a disgusting smile and declared, I got to date Ms. Chogwan thanks to Assistant Kim. He continued, Today I'm here just to say that, I know Assistant Kim is suffering greatly, but I still want you to separate personal and professional matters. Director Chung was speaking when Kim Sun interrupted, congratulating him, but he didn't understand what you just said. The old me, what can I say? I'm fine, he said with a smile, holding a bottle of wine in his hand. Pour a glass of wine for Director Jong with a wish for 100 years of happiness. The city is gradually turning dark, and the streetlights are flickering on. Kim Sun walked back from the party on a cold, windy road, but without a coat on. You walked while thinking about the date the director mentioned earlier. You don't want to think about it, but I also had a very happy time dating Chaegwon. Their love story began with a confession. After that, they spent 6 months dating, and it led to marriage. Maybe it was because you longed so much for the word family that you were truly happy at that moment to have a home of your own. You were determined never to let go and to stay together forever. But in reality, it wasn't like that. Your marriage has come to an end. After getting married, Kim Sun realized his wife's true nature, the contempt from her family, and the seemingly happy marriage turned into a living hell. Finally, after a year, you got divorced. Kim Sun didn't expect much, just hoped they could have a meal together and share the happy moments of the day. When tired, stay by each other's side to comfort and encourage. Seeing the family of 3 just passing by, he suddenly felt lonely and envious. He just hopes for a normal life. Kim Sun felt a bit different today, maybe because of the alcohol. It feels a bit colder than usual today. On the sidewalk, there was a girl running in a hurry. Sua was running fast as if she had something urgent. So it turns out she had too much work today and arrived late to the evening party hosted by Kim Sun. Sua ran for her life to make it to the party on time. Kim Sun is also walking on the sidewalk along the same street as Sua. Sua tried to run as fast as she could to make it to the party on time. I wonder if someone running and someone walking ever notice each other. And the two stopped in front of something, Sua and Kim Sun were both quite surprised looking ahead. Could it be that they had run into each other? But no, Sua arrived at the party only to find it had ended long ago. Kim Sun was surprised to see Aoli sitting in front of a building waiting for him. Aoli was very happy to see you had returned. Kim Sun was quite surprised to see Aoli waiting for him. She also smiled warmly and greeted him. It started snowing heavily outside, reflecting the image of Kim Sun's apartment inside. Kim Sun swiped the card to invite Aoli into the house. As soon as she stepped in, Aoli complained, "Winter in Korea is colder than I thought." Kim Sun got straight to the point and asked her why she came to Korea. She replied, "You're asking that too?" She turned around shyly and said, "Of course, because I miss Sin already. Working where I want is great, and I still have 10 more days before my shift starts, so I made the most of it and came here," Aoli said to Kim Sin. She asked if she could stay at his place for a few days. He, of course, was fine with it, but there was only one bed in his house. Aoli felt it was fine, they could sleep together, they had done it once before anyway. Even so, he felt uneasy. Kim Sun noticed her reaction was quite sad because he kept hesitating, not wanting her to stay. So, he finally gave in and told her to take a warm bath first. Aoli happily agreed and went right away. Aori was singing while taking a shower, feeling very cheerful. Kim Sun is in the kitchen, washing some ingredients to prepare dinner. You think, it's so cold outside, maybe I should cook soybean paste soup with blood cockles, bulgogi, right? It's been a long time since you felt this way again. It's been a while since Kim Sun last cooked for someone else. In the past, when he cooked for Chaekwon, she criticized the dish he had worked so hard to prepare for her. He gently comforted her. These dishes seem too ordinary, but he's confident in their taste, so hurry and give them a try. The dishes you cook now remind you of the ones you made for Chaegwon in the past, starting with soybean paste soup, followed by stir-fried mushrooms with bell peppers. You put another bowl of rice on the table, and all those dishes in the past were completely discarded by Chaegwon without touching a single bite. His emotions were deeply stirred witnessing that scene. And now he sets up the same meal again. Right now my mind is in complete turmoil at that moment. Memories of the past flood back, feeling completely powerless. At the same time, Aoli stepped out of the bathroom, smelling the aroma from the kitchen. She let out a cry. I smelled the fragrance earlier. Did Sin make those dishes himself? She stepped out with a clean, fragrant body. 2 people immediately sat down at the table. I rushed, so I'm not sure if it suits your taste, he said. She confidently replied, "Don't worry, I can finish it all." She grabbed a piece of rice and some food, eagerly putting it in her mouth. The food entered her mouth, her cheeks puffing up. Kim Sin silently waited in suspense for the reaction of the person across from her. Aoli's big round eyes and raised eyebrows showed how delicious Kim Sun's food was. "This dish is bulgogi, right? You cook it even better than what I had in the Korean neighborhood." Aoli couldn't stop praising it. "What you just witnessed made you really happy. Aoli told you to hurry up and try it." And as the two finished their meal, the sky gradually darkened. The important thing now is that the Kim Sin household only has 1 bed and 2 pillows. Kim Sin felt quite awkward, but Aoli, on the other hand, didn't feel shy at all and even teased him. "So how are we going to sleep now?" The snowstorm outside had completely stopped, and inside the room, the two had decided to share the bed. Aoli had been fast asleep for a long time. Kim Sin couldn't sleep, tossing and turning, wondering what Aoli thought of him. "You know Eli likes you, but you're still not ready to develop a close relationship with others. More precisely, you're afraid." He reached out to gently stroke her hair, afraid that the more he got to know her, the more vulnerable he would become. The fear of not being reciprocated grows stronger. Kim Sin thought that after the divorce everything would be fine. The wound in his heart was deeper than he realized. His thoughts gradually faded, and sleep began to overwhelm him. Suddenly, Aoli unexpectedly hugged him, shaking off his current sleepiness. Kim Sun was shocked, unable to imagine the current scene. He thought she was sleepwalking, which explained her actions, and quietly called her. But she didn't hear him. As he got closer, he could see the details of her lips, her body, and her sensitive ears, which made it hard for him to control himself. Kim Sun instinctively kissed Aoli on the forehead, waking her up from her dream. She lifted her head, and their lips were inches apart, causing both of them to blush in embarrassment. Aoli nestled in Kim Sun's arms, the two gazing at each other for a long time. Both couldn't control themselves and shared a warm kiss on the snowy night. The full moon witnessed this sweet scene. The city gradually turned off the lights and fell into a deep sleep in the night. At the entrance of the pharmaceutical company Leon, there are still trucks arriving and leaving for loading and unloading, and a supervisor is diligently directing the vehicles. At the entrance above, red scanners are installed for inspection. Seotae's office. He is on a very important phone call with someone. As soon as he picks up, the voice on the other end speaks with sadness and seriousness. "Director Seotae, I'm sorry. It seems that Mr. Seotae had a hunch, figuring it out beforehand, so without waiting for the person on the other end to explain, Seotae, sweating profusely, anxiously asked, "Is it really not possible?" The person on the other end very seriously replied, "You know too, what else can a small business like ours do? I truly apologize to you." Dongi walked into the room and saw Seotae holding his head, worriedly asking, "What's wrong?" Seotae shook his head sadly and replied, "Rejected again. This is the fourth order cancelled this month." Looking at the messy pile of files and papers on the desk, he said with no hope left, "If we keep going like this, we might go bankrupt." Suddenly the landline rang again. Director Seotae quickly answered the phone, speaking rapidly. "Hello, I am Director of Pharmaceuticals Leon, Seotae. We are ready to deliver anytime, whatever you want to order." Seotae spoke a long string of words and then paused. The person on the other end of the line was also very confused, stammering and scene change. Director Seotae has a conversation and drinks coffee with Kim Shin. Assistant Kim says, "It's been a while since I last saw Director Seotae. How have you been lately? We've met a few times when I first started, and it's already been 3 years, hasn't it? Time flies so fast." Seotae scratched his head and said, "I'm still doing fine with Aiko at home. Sorry you had to see me like this. I'm getting old, so I was a bit impatient." Kim shook his head and replied, "It's okay. I reached out too quickly anyway." Seotae glanced at the person sitting next to him, Kim Sin, feeling a bit curious and wondering who this girl was. Kim Sin quickly introduced her. "This is Eoli. She will be assisting me in this task." Dongi walked with Seotae and naively asked, "A foreigner?" Seotae laughed and teased Kim Sin, "Really? It's about time you found someone to support you. So what brings you two here today?" Kim Sin said. "Director Seotae, I know this question might be a bit sensitive, but has the company been facing any difficulties recently?" Seotae was about to sip from his glass when he suddenly froze, startled. Put the glass of water down on the table and said, "To be honest, my business has been a bit troublesome lately, but I'm still holding on. I already mentioned earlier, Akko places a lot of orders with me. Our bio factory that we're building here just needs to get up and running, and things will be much better. The worrying thing about Aiko is," before he could finish, Kim Sin interrupted, saying, "I heard the Disan Pharmaceutical Company is putting pressure on your company." Kim Sin spoke so precisely that Director Seotae and Dongi were startled. He continued slowly, "Leon is short on cap." Dongi, realizing Kim Sin knew everything, turned to Seotae hesitantly. "Director," while Seotae was deeply worried and upset. Kim Sin reassured him, "Don't worry. Today I'm not here as an employee of Aiko." He put the glass of water down on the table and said frankly, "Director Seotae, I want to invest in Leon Pharmaceuticals." Seotae was a bit surprised and asked, "You invest?" Then he bowed his head, smiled and said, "I don't need to say anything more." He slowly wiped his glasses and said to Kim Sin with concern, "It's true that my company really needs money right now, but I might have to decline. You said that, so I'll be straight with you. It's really tough for this company to last more than 3 months. If it's transferred to someone else, I won't be able to return your investment. Thousands or hundreds of millions." He advised Kim to use that money for something more important. Hearing such sincere and straightforward words from Director Seotae, Kim Sin also had to sit and think for a while. As for Mr. Seotae, he was also quite sad to make such a decision. Then Kim Sin said, "Really, I will change the question. How much money is needed for the company to overcome this crisis?" Director Seotae was utterly shocked, mouth agape in disbelief at this question. How much money? Then he replied, "A few hundred, or a few billion." Kim Sin heard that and said, "This isn't a $1 billion investment." He took out his phone, showed it to him and said, "I think the director is an excellent businessman who can guarantee the quality of various kinds of medicine and has never delivered late. So just tell me how much capital you need." The director held the phone and looked carefully. Then Seotae and manager Dongi were so shocked that they almost fell over, eyes wide open, mouths agape, speechless. The amount of money Kim Sin has is enormous, absolutely massive. He's like a hidden millionaire, radiating a dazzling aura. Kim Sin made an offer. "If that's the case, I'll invest." Director Seotae was still in shock when he saw the amount of capital that Kim Sin wanted to invest. Then he took all the company's documents and brought them to Kim Sin and Aoli, an enormous pile of papers stacked on top of each other. Aoli reviewed the documents and gave them a compliment, truly an excellent company. Although current revenue isn't great due to overinvestment, the plant's operations are running smoothly, and there are quite a few long-term customers. Without trust in quality, it would be very difficult to do business, but once operations stabilize, there will certainly be no more issues. Kim Sin turned to her and asked, "What about the new factory?" Aoli said. "Its value might increase significantly." Hearing her speak a long string of English, Director Seotae was completely frozen, unable to understand anything, and immediately asked Kim Sin, "Assistant Kim, who is she?" At that moment Kim suddenly remembered, "Oh, I haven't explained clearly yet, have I? Iori is currently a financial specialist at Mogon. Today I asked her to come along with me. Seodi heard that and laughed cheerfully, saying, "Ah, I see," thinking to himself, so from the beginning he had that intention, that's why he brought her along. He recalled 3 years ago, the guy was just a new employee who knew nothing, shy and quiet, coming to the company, stammering as he introduced himself to everyone. Now that you've become a successful investor, it's true you can never predict anything. At the end of the meeting, the two shook hands. SEOT said, "Assistant Kim, no, I mean Director Kim, I really appreciate it. This time I owe you." Kim Sin politely replied, "Not at all, it's all thanks to your business skills, Director." SEOT took something out of his pocket, handed it to him and said, "Consider this my thanks to you." So it turns out that was the business card of the Director of Biohuduan, and he also told you to feel free to contact him if you're interested. Kim Sin drives a convertible with Ioli. On the car ride, Ioli said that thanks to Sin, she had an amazing experience, her first time handling a 40 billion won investment. Ioli smiled and replied, "Well then, do I get any reward?" Kim Sin unexpectedly asked. "Reward, huh?" Ioli jokingly said, "Oh my god, are you really planning to use a high-level worker like me for free?" Kim Sin immediately replied, "You do have a point. So what do you want to receive?" Ioli asked again. "I don't want to receive anything at all. But there is one thing I want to try." So that was the experience of escaping the prison. Kim Sin, handcuffed, looked a bit confused and asked Aoli, "Isn't this a little strange?" Aoli simply replied, "Too late now. Let's enjoy this together." It turns out the current value of Leon Company is less than 2 trillion won, while Kim Sin's current assets are 2 trillion won. After enduring the experience and challenges of being imprisoned, Aoli and Kim Sin took a commemorative photo together. Aoli gazed at the photo intently and felt incredibly happy. As they were walking down the street, she asked him, "Sin, wasn't that prison break game fun?" Kim Sin replied. Aoli excitedly said, "There are so many fun things to do in Seoul, it's amazing." Kim Sin proudly replied, "Of course, there's even a place called the Tower of Challenges." Aoli was left puzzled. A tower? Turns out Kim Sin was teasing her. It was just a typical Korean joke. Then Aoli said something that made Kim Sin completely surprised, frozen in place. She wished Mogon was in Seoul so she could be with Sin every day. Hearing that, Kim Sin had a sudden thought. A bit crazy, Mogon, huh? How about buying that company? Of course, I also know that I can't. Morgan's current market value is about $370 billion, equivalent to 480 trillion won. For someone like me with only 2 billion won, that company is way too big. But if it's just small business in Seoul, I could probably do it, he thought to himself as he walked along. Then Aoli suddenly noticed something and asked, "Sin, what's that over there?" Kim Sin excitedly asked. "Where?" When he looked at the store she pointed to, his expression turned a bit awkward. Kim Sin explained to Aoli, "Well, simply put, it's a place where the two of you can watch a movie together." Aoli, hearing that, got even more excited and said, "Oh, watching a movie? I love watching movies." Kim Sin hesitated and told her, "But it's not exactly watching a movie anymore." Aoli, hearing that, became more curious and excitedly said, "Let's go in and try it out." As soon as she walked into the store, Aoli felt a bit shy, smiling awkwardly. The store manager smiled widely when he saw her. Kim Sin also smiled shyly. But seeing Kim Sin's face made the shop owner a bit angry, unpleasant. The atmosphere suddenly turned dark and eerily quiet. Aoli turned and softly asked Kim Sin, "What's wrong?" Kim Sin reassured her, "Nothing at all." It seems like the manager of this store doesn't like Kim Sin. He keeps glaring at them with a bullet-like gaze, trying to swallow his anger. It's unforgivable. How can it be that one person has to work part-time while the other gets to date a blonde beauty? Who is that guy anyway? Just by looking, he's probably around my level or maybe a bit better. Someone like this, if I met him in real life. After Eli and Kim Sin went through and picked a movie, they went to the cashier to buy tickets and pay. The store manager said, "All right, please proceed to room 15. The shop owner's heart is filled with discomfort and restlessness. Before entering the movie room, Aoli excitedly told Kim Sin, "I wonder what this movie will be like." Kim responded. The store owner tightly held the mop and silently made a plan. He couldn't back down like this. "I will pretend to be cleaning outside, and if I hear any strange noises, I will immediately rush into the room and say, 'You are not allowed to do that here.' Prevent him from committing immoral, inhumane acts." 30 minutes later, he had polished the floor outside the movie room door until it shone, standing there cleaning without hearing anything at all. Why, thought, could they really just be here to watch a movie? In the movie room, Aoli and Kim Sin leaned on each other, intently following every scene of the film, as it reached the part where the father, gravely ill, said his final words to his son. They gathered to watch each scene of the movie. This is a movie about a pandemic. Many people have died. Aoli rested her head on Kim Sin's shoulder. She casually asked him, If a pandemic like in the movies really happened, what would it be like? Kim immediately replied that the whole world would fall into chaos, and the economy would completely collapse. Iori said, if that really happens, many people will lose valuable things, the ones they love. Kim-sin said, but he didn't think things would go like in the movies. Because there are always people who never lose hope in any situation, they will find a cure together, stop the epidemic, I believe so. Ioli heard that and just looked at Sin with great admiration. She thought to herself, Sin's expression just now looked so cool, definitely different from a man of 4 letters. In the evening, when everything has fallen asleep, Iori and Kim-sin were sleeping next to each other when suddenly Iori, who was asleep, started coughing uncontrollably. Kim-sin woke up, worried, and asked, Ioli, are you not feeling well? I kept shaking her, but she just kept coughing uncontrollably. Then Kim-sin was stunned to see her face turn pale, even coughing up blood. He quickly carried her out. Feeling extremely anxious, this isn't good, that kid is burning up, it doesn't seem like just a regular cold. We need to hurry. While running, Kim-sin suddenly stopped. He was stunned by the scene before him. What on earth is this? In front of him were many dead bodies lying scattered on the ground. The streets were desolate, overwhelmingly sad. There are also a few cars on fire. He carried her on his back, worried and scared. The situation in the city right now is terrifying, just like in a movie. The scene is chaotic right now. Sin looked at the view in front of him, confused, and said, what's going on here? Suddenly, Ioli next to him called his name, startling him to turn around and look. Her hand was covered in prominent green veins, barely moving. She whispered, it's all because of you. Her face was deathly pale, hollow, with deep dark eyes. She opened her mouth again. Because of you, everyone had to die. Kim-sin suddenly woke up in a sweat, realizing it was all just a dream. He sat up, still looking dazed, and turned to the girl sleeping next to him. Beside her, she was sleeping soundly. He looked at her, let out a sigh of relief, then pulled the drawer open. He took out a card, looked at the words on it, and thought to himself, Bio Corporation. He remembered the moment before Seite handed him the business card. He had asked him, what kind of company is that? And he replied, I've invested in this company for quite a while. If you're interested, give it a try. They are researching the use of artificial intelligence to analyze flu types and create vaccines. By analyzing the viruses back to reality, he picked up the phone and called someone with a very anxious look, thinking to himself, if successful, we could create a major revolution in the medical world. He cautiously asked, is it Dr. Huduan? The next morning, Ioli said, well, Sin, I'm leaving now. Kim-sin hugged her and said, goodbye, call me when you arrive. She replied, Sin, take care of yourself. She arrived at the departure gate, turned around before leaving, and cheerfully waved goodbye to him. He also waved at her, then suddenly his phone rang. He picked up the phone and asked, who is this? Suddenly there was loud laughter from the other end. Turns out Meng-yu was laughing at him. While playing video games he said, I give up on you. Who rushes to invest just because of a midnight dream? Isn't it Kim-sin? Kim-sin, embarrassed, made an excuse, I was just meeting up. Meng-yu said, it's all the same, Kim-sin asked. So, what do you think? Meng-yu replied, developing vaccines. This project will be hard to succeed. He listened and realized something. Meng-yu continued, of course, if using artificial intelligence the development speed would be faster. But the thing is, even if the drug is produced, it would still take 8 to 15 years to get it on the market, and you also have to compete with many other pharmaceutical companies that already have a foothold. Kim was standing at the red light, continuing to listen to him. The profit compared to the investment capital was too low. He put his hand in his pocket and said, that's true. He pondered, no matter how much money he had, he couldn't invest in something without potential. Kim thought to himself, so the conclusion is that I'm not investing, the red light has turned green, so I can go. He walked while thinking, why do I feel so worried? Meng-yu said, I'm just offering my opinion from a non-expert perspective, experts might think differently. Hearing that, you couldn't help but feel doubtful. He added, I'll introduce you to an expert, just go and ask him. Scene change, at a certain school. A muscular man is lifting weights, breathing heavily. Suddenly the person grinned, revealing teeth so white they almost glowed. He lifted the weights while saying, nice to meet you, Kim. He warmly introduced himself. I am a professor of infectious diseases at Johns Hopkins University Hospital, Paul Letsu. He spoke in front of the screen and said, just call me Pao. You were so nervous that you stuttered. Hello, sir. He asked you, I heard you were urgently looking for me. What's going on? Kim-sin answered honestly, actually. He paused for a moment, then he said, developing vaccines with artificial intelligence. As a scholar, I find this project very good. I highly welcome this project. Kim-sin asked, what do you think? The professor replied, in fact, artificial intelligence is widely used in medicine today. Kim-sin asked again, has it already been used? The professor replied, people use it to develop new drugs and analyze genes. Of course, the performance is still quite poor, but major companies are competing to develop it, so I think we'll hear some good news soon. Kim Sin, after listening, immediately understood the issue and said, is that so? He wondered, thinking to himself, it has been used and there are many competitors as well. The situation is tougher than I thought. He looked at the professor and thought, indeed, this investment project. Before he could finish thinking, the professor said, about Mr. Sin. You remind me of a friend. He also said we should use artificial intelligence to develop vaccines. He's Korean too. Kim Sin was very surprised to hear that and asked if that friend happened to be Dr. Hu Duan. The professor was also surprised and said, you know him too? Kim Sin replied, what a coincidence. The project I mentioned earlier is Dr. Hu Duan's project. The professor, he tightly gripped the dumbbell handle and continued, he's my friend, and also a genius, not just any ordinary genius, but one who can change the world. Kim Sin crossed his arms and asked, if he's that good, wouldn't studying in the US be better, so why did he leave the US? The professor laughed and said, you don't know much about Hu Duan, do you? The teacher recounted that in the past, the supervising professor had underestimated Hu Duan's research and said that his work would bring no profit. Hu Duan, hearing that, became furious, punched the professor right in the chin. Then he quit his job at the hospital, saying he would rather do research on his own. Kim Sin, after hearing the story, felt a bit scared and thought, is he really that aggressive? He suddenly remembered something and thought, but wait, what if I said I wouldn't invest? He imagines himself getting punched in the jaw and wonders, would he really get punched by that guy? The professor asked, Sin, have you scheduled a meeting with Hu Duan yet? You replied, I've arranged to meet him at the lab tomorrow. He made a request. I wonder if I could join you. Personally, I'm very curious what that so-called genius has been researching. The next morning, at a large company, Kim Sin is standing next to the professor who called yesterday, his face showing a bit of worry being near Professor Pao, while he, surprised, just let out an, oh. A voice rang out, it's a pleasure to meet you both. I am the director of Bio Corporation. In the room there were people sitting and studying something. In front of him stood the company's director, his face pale and haggard, introducing himself as Hu Duan. The director approached the two, shook hands with Professor Pao and said, Pao, long time no see. The professor responded with a pat on the shoulder and said, it's been 10 years, Hu Duan. Meanwhile, Mr. Kim next to them looked a bit worried at the two. He breathed a sigh of relief, thinking to himself, he was very different from what he had imagined. He looked at the director and thought, he doesn't seem too dangerous. It's safe to talk about the investment now. Suddenly, Hu Duan coughed up blood. Pao coughed towards them, leaving them stunned, not knowing what was happening. Pao walked over to Hu Duan, while Kim Sin's face stiffened, trying to keep calm and thinking, is this first investment going to be okay? In many ways, Kim Sin's current assets are 2 trillion won. He hesitated and said sorry. I was impolite when we first met, but after apologizing politely, Hu Duan froze, sipping his usual drink. According to his professional habit, Hopkins smiled and said, you're still as weak as ever. That's because you don't lift weights. And then somehow he was lifting weights like it was nothing. Although Kim Sin was puzzled, wondering where this gratitude came from, he still politely responded, Professor, how's your health? Hu Duan calmly replied, I'm fine. It's just that I haven't slept in 5 days. Kim Sin, concerned, thought about rescheduling. This isn't good at all. How about we leave it for another day? But before finishing the sentence, he already saw Hu Duan's annoyed face. He squeezed the can tightly. Kim Sin is smiling on the outside but feeling nervous inside. Hu Duan angrily questioned, another time, you said another time. There is no another day here. Time is passing right now, and we don't know when or where the virus will break out, he said, gripping tightly in pain like a true madman. Even trying to speak until blood splatters everywhere, by then it will be too late. Hopkins and Kim Sin could only stay silent. He trembled as he held the remote. Why do I want to create a flu vaccine using artificial intelligence? Let me explain the reason. The projector lit up. First he asked, Director Kim, do you know about the flu? Kim Sin replied, it's a virus similar to a cold, right? Similar but different. Then he began to explain in detail. A cold can be caused by many types of viruses with mild symptoms, but the flu is only caused by the influenza virus and is a disease that causes tens of thousands to millions of deaths worldwide each year. Millions of people each year, an alarming number to worry about. Of course, while Kim Sin was pondering, he continued his purpose. And this flu virus has also undergone various mutations. SARS, MERS, Spanish flu are some examples. In the case of the Spanish flu, more than 40 million people died. If a flu like the Spanish flu occurred in today's world, where people interact with each other so frequently, the world will fall into an unprecedented pandemic. Finally, he firmly said, I want to stop that. Kim Sin asked, is the current vaccine ineffective? Hu Duan explained, the current vaccine doesn't work against flu variants, we have to develop a new one each time it emerges. The key lies in how quickly one can react, and the use of artificial intelligence can significantly shorten that time frame. These are the achievements we have accomplished so far. Then he set a stack of papers down. Hopkin and Kim Sin started examining them, in which Kim Sin concluded, so, artificial intelligence does not automatically create vaccines. It's simply about quickly extracting data from large-scale experiments, but both data entry and decision-making ultimately need to be done by humans. This is a truly amazing study. Here Hopkin calls Hu Duan. Both started with a simple exchange. Are you still continuing your research after leaving America? Yes. How about funding in Korea? Not much, but enough to continue the research. So really, Hopkins suddenly put down his dumbbell. Then, as if unleashing a terrifying power from sheer amazement, unbelievable. The two remaining individuals were stunned by the strange glowing aura. Hopkin cheerfully praised, this is truly an outstanding study. It's amazing that you've come this far with limited resources. I want to sell my house to invest in this project. Then he hugged him tightly. Hu Duan, you truly are a genius, he stammered. Thank you. Suddenly he heard Kim Sin calling him Professor Pao. So, in your opinion, Professor, does this project have a high chance of success? Not really, he casually said, shocking both young men to the core. To be more precise, this research is a valuable project for a scholar like me. However, for investors seeking profit, this is a vague project. First of all, we cannot predict how long the development will take, and even when developed, this research will only truly shine when a strong virus variant that Hu Duan mentioned emerges. Of course, it can be used in other fields to generate future profits, but it is a project that requires a lot of time and cost until then. Kim Sin listened carefully to the professor's words from start to finish. This is a tough choice. If we only look at profit potential, withdrawing investment is reasonable, but someone has to do this for the advancement of medicine. However, blindly investing, while you were lost in thought, a voice called out, Director Kim brought you back to reality. Hu Duan asked directly, what are your conditions like? After that, with great determination for this project, I set generous conditions. If within 5 years I don't achieve satisfactory results, I will transfer all the research outcomes to you. Kim Sin was astonished, and so was the professor. So he hurriedly stopped. Hu Duan from doing that? Kim Sin interrupted. Have you thought it through? That is my determination, Hu Duan replied. Anyway, if this research doesn't yield results within 5 years, it will lose its value and be overtaken by other companies, instead of ending in an incomplete manner. I want to have time to burn with all my passion, even if it's just for a moment. He clenched his hand to show his determination. He silently looked at him, and he straightforwardly met his gaze. Finally he asked, how much investment do you need? We need about 2 billion won each year, but the more, the better. You put your hand on the ledger, all right? Since you've made such a bold proposal, I'll back you up more firmly, 10 billion kwan per year, for a total of 50 billion kwan. They were stunned when they heard that outrageous number. You slowly stood up. To be honest, I'm not sure if this decision is the right one, but I believe the passion you've shown is worth it. Hopefully you'll achieve great results, he said as he extended his hand to congratulate them on their investment. Hu Duan was still in shock. The professor smiled in satisfaction. Fortunately, even in his blood-spitting shock, Hu Duan knew to shake hands again. I'll do my best. Suddenly there was a loud bang, and the professor anxiously called, Hu Duan, wake up, Hu Duan. Amid the countless cries of Hu Duan, he still kept his business smile, thinking to himself, this investment, can it last for 5 years? She walked along humming softly. Good morning, wishing everyone a great day ahead. Good morning, Sue, she politely asked. Where's Assistant Kim? Colleagues looked around. Kim's assistant. He was just here. Sure, here's the translation. Then he must be on the rooftop. She smiled and said thanks. Then she hummed her way up to the rooftop, happily thinking, it's such a blessing to meet Sin every morning. Here he is, though I've seen him. Kim Sin is currently talking to someone else. So she quietly closed the rooftop door. All right, let's do it later. Unexpectedly hearing shocking news, he said, thank you for your time, Department Head. I officially submit my resignation letter. She stood frozen in shock. Anyone in this life? Everyone has their own dreams, but is there any dream more passionate than this? No longer crammed into suffocating subway trains. No longer stuck in the office, struggling with a mountain of work until late at night. No more bowing and flattering the boss. Absolute financial freedom, money grows on its own, even though I don't have to lift a finger. And starting today, I officially became a wealthy Baekthu. In the company, Kimma, you've worked hard lately. Wishing you all the best out there, led by Minguk. Everyone is having a small farewell party for you. Kim Sin politely said, I appreciate everyone for the time we've spent. I've learned many valuable things at ACO. Minguk asked, Have you made any plans for the future yet? I plan to invest and live a free life my way. Really? Then they shook hands as a farewell with a promise to meet again. Drop by whenever you're free, we'll raise a glass together, said Kim Sin. Next time, I'll treat everyone to a lavish meal. Suddenly, the department head asked quietly, I heard you've become a major shareholder of Leon's, catching you off guard along with some worry. He softly said, Congratulations to you. Even though he thought to himself, You don't have to hide it, he still lowered his voice and said, Thank you. Suddenly a colleague with tears in their eyes said, Sin, I'll be really sad when you leave. You're overreacting, my friend. You thought that overdoing it would be disrespectful to this male colleague, but he tearfully ran over, hugging Kim Sin tightly. Goodbye, dear colleague, you thought indifferently. I've lost count of how many times this guy has hugged me. Suddenly he changed his mood 180 degrees and slyly said, Let me know when there's any investment project, all right? From now on, I'll follow you. I want to make a lot of money and then quit. Minguk subtly muttered from behind. The male colleague turned around in fear. On, he sneered and said, I didn't expect you to have such a bold plan. The male colleague, sweating profusely, tried to explain, Anne, I didn't. But before he could defend himself, the manager smiled brightly and said, Making lots of money is a good thing. I support you, Sungi. And then, with a final blow that made everyone pale, just write the resignation letter. The male colleague bit his lip, tears streaming down his face, and promised, I will work even harder. Minguk turned to talk to Kim Sin. All right, did you stop by other departments to greet everyone? Yes, but that colleague left with a gloomy face. At the HR department, I want to say goodbye to one last person. Chigwon coldly stared at him. Then he let out a sarcastic laugh. What's up? Finally decided to quit, huh? You didn't care about her harsh words, just gave a simple reply. Still not stopping there, she added. Stay well. Remember to stay a bit humble. Don't believe she had good intentions in congratulating you, wondering, what do you mean by that? She remained standing with her arms crossed, speaking arrogantly. Even if you got lucky and made it big with cryptocurrency, aren't you still just a poor, miserable person? What if people find out and start avoiding you? So just live true to yourself. Kim Sin pressed his lips together, not responding to her taunt, while she continued to stare at him. Suddenly he calmly replied, Yeah, so what? All thanks to me getting divorced from her. She frowned, wanting to respond. What, hey? But he interrupted. And... She rolled her eyes in anger. So many loving words left behind, Kim Sin doesn't care at all. In the end, I met the person I didn't want to meet.